Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. The title is Cultural Awareness Session on Qin Burmese Culture and Language. Today's webinar will be presented by Dr. Uldis Ozolins with assistance from our panel of Qin Burmese interpreters. And on our interpreter panel today, we have Florence Fan Chun, who is a Qin Mizo interpreter and community worker. And we also have Zhang Ho Hai Hao Kip, who is a Qin Zomi Tedim interpreter and who is also a community worker. And finally, we have Ling Zathang, who is a Qin Hakka Falam and Burmese interpreter translator. And I will now hand it over to Dr. Uldis Ozolins and our panel of interpreters. Thank you very much, Dr. Ozolins.
Good, thank you very much. All Graduates runs these cultural awareness sessions for the many language service providers who have often a difficult task identifying languages and providing interpreters, particularly in some of the newly arrived and rarer languages. And the Qin varieties are certainly that. So what we want to do today is to go through, firstly, some of the background, some of the history of the Qin and why they are in Australia, why they've come to Australia. Then we'll actually look at the various language varieties and try and sort out which varieties will be right for whichever occasion you need interpreters for. And we'll end up looking at some of the cultural issues, some of the issues around culture and language of the various Qin communities. The Qin state is a state at the very west of Myanmar. It borders Bangladesh and India. Bangladesh, of course, is the former East Pakistan, became Bangladesh. The Qin speakers stretch across these boundaries because, of course, the borders were made by colonial powers, not by the people themselves. And the Qin are also spread throughout all of Burma. So a Qin speaker will mostly come from the Qin state in Burma, but may well come from across the border in India or in Bangladesh. Or in fact have been living elsewhere in the state of Myanmar. Now, I wanted to go on and ask a few questions about our panel and get them each to introduce themselves a little bit more. What I want to look at first is some of the historical and present aspects. One of the things which I know confuses a lot of people in Australia is this question: do we call the country Burma or do we call it Myanmar, and why? It was known as Burma, it's now often known as Myanmar. What are the reasons? And at the same time, I think we need to have a look at the little bit of the history of the Qin and the varieties of Qin communities, the basic demography and social situation, and that they are in Burma, Myanmar, and then the factors which have led the Qin people to migrate to Australia, because like many other groups in Australia, they've not just been attracted by another country, but in some cases have had to leave. So I'll stop the sharing of the PowerPoint there, and maybe I don't know who'd like to start. Maybe Zhang, could I ask you this question about Burma or Myanmar? What should Australians call the country?
It's Myanmar. At the moment, the current name is Myanmar. It was Union Burma before, but now it's Myanmar. It includes everyone, like all ethnic group combined together. That's we use as a common name. So that's Myanmar. Burma is only Burma. Burma means just one type of people. Burma. It's Burma, so that's called Burma. Yeah, so Myanmar means all the ethnic group. They all, the name of the land is Myanmar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the name of the state, and it
Yeah.
includes all groups. And
Yeah.
Burma was the old name. Was that a colonial name that was given?
Yes, colonial name. Yes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Florence, please.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I just wanted to add a few more things what Zhang said. Burma it's like was given by the British authorities during the British colonial rule, which is from 1885 to 1948. So, and that is in English name, and the spelling also chosen by the British authorities. But later on, the around 1940, 1989, the governments, like the country's government, which is the military regime of Burma, they changed the name to Myanmar. But the reason is that like many other countries and even the Burmese population, they don't recognize that name change because they don't recognize the country's the military government. That is why very confusing to many people. But it's now Myanmar, and the name Myanmar is more inclusive of minorities than the name previously.
Yeah. Good. And Ling, have you got anything to add to that? That's a very good account, I think, of what's been going on.
Yep. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, according to Florence statement, that's exactly correct. It was Burma before. Yeah, actually, it was named by British. But after the military governments ruled Burma, and they changed some sort of even Yangon. It was Rangoon, but they changed Yangon like that. So now it becomes Myanmar. Myanmar include the whole ethnicity. So that's correct. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I go on and move on to the demography and in particular the factors which have led the Qin people to come to Australia? And I think that would be I think it follows on from those issues of the military government. Ling, maybe you could start off and tell us who are the Qin in the sense of their ethnicity, how they differ from anyone else in Myanmar, and how they came to Australia.
Qins means yeah, I'm not really sure, but there are more than 15 to 20 different ethnics in Qin State. That's a very, very small sub-ethnics. So there is 9 townships in Qin State, and normally southern Qin State and northern Qin State, two parts of they divided into south and north. And yeah, there is the main Qin we call are things like Hakka Qin, Flam Qin, Tirim Qin, now Zomi Qin, and Kuki Qin, and southern Qin is Matupi and Mindat, Gamblet, and Pletwa, something like that. So we speak different, the languages, similar, but not. We can't understand each other. Most of the northern Qin State, but southern Qin State language is a bit different, and it's not difficult. It's not easy for us to understand them for the northern Qin people, but most Qin northern Qin State, Palam, Hakka, Chandlang, we can understand, and yeah, almost yeah, similar. But Zomi is a little bit different, and it's difficult to understand each other. So when we talk, we speak Burmese. We use Burmese. If something, if I want to talk with Zomi friends, we use instead of using Qin language, we use Burmese. But from Hakka and Tantang, we speak almost similar, so we understand each other. But for southern people, southern Qin state, we don't speak each other in our language. We use Burmese.
Yeah.
So Burmese.
Okay, we'll look at the languages in a minute. Can I have a little bit on maybe Zhang can fill this in on how why the Qin have come to Australia, what has driven them to come to Australia, and what the background of that is.
Well, yeah, thanks for asking. The main reason why many Qin people and many other Burmese people migrate to Australia or other Western country is because of military dictatorship. They've been rule over the country for over 60 years, and they persecute all the small minority ethnic group. That's all about persecution, torture, discrimination against small ethnic group. So we are a minority ethnic group. So there's no other way to have a better life except moving out of the country. So that's a brief history of migration into Australia as well. And from 2006, 7, 8, the United Nations High Commissioner have many refugees from Malaysia, Thailand, and India. And Australia federal government also increased their immigration intake by that time. And at the moment, according to Moronda City Council's website, I found 15,000 Burmese people settled down in Moronda City Council. 15,000 people, Burmese. Yeah, so, yeah.
And that now they're not all Qin, but would the majority of them be Qin, or they would be every ethnic group?
Every ethnic group. I mean, like Karen, Qin, and other group as well, small group. But the majorities are Qin.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's been in that period of the last, say, sort of 10, 12 years that the majority have come. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the Qin in Burma? Have they were they a group that was part of the agricultural? Was it an agricultural sector entirely, or was there Qin who were educated and living in the larger cities, or what?
Yep. Well, most of the Qin people, I could say more than 80% are, the shifting cultivation. We call this is farmer. They are cultivators, and both what I mentioned already, the whole Qin, yeah, even both southern Qin and northern Qin states. Most people are in their life, they're living by shifting cultivation, and they are cultivators.
This is the varieties of Qin that has been published by NATI. There are more varieties than this, but these are the ones that have so far been identified by NATI. And if you have a look at other listings in say Ethnologue and other places where you can find material, you'll find even more of this. As I mentioned, some of these are border languages. What I'd like you to do now is for each of you to go through and actually talk about your own languages And also, I think we need to find out. So the ones in bold are spoken by our speakers. I'd like each of you to present your own linguistic background and your experiences in interpreting for the group. And then we've got the other questions. I think it's important, and Ling already mentioned what's the degree of intelligibility between the different varieties, and that varies a great deal. And then what proportions of the Qin speakers also speak Burmese. So I'll stop it there. And Zhang, maybe I can ask you about your language background, and then your experience of interpreting for Qin speakers with that language. And please tell me how good are the language services at actually identifying the correct Qin variety have you found? Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's very important when it comes to interpreting the language. Some people assume that all Qin people speak the same dialect or same language, but that's when it comes to specific interpretation, that's very different. Like I speak Qin Tedim or Qin Zomi. Sometimes Qin Mizo and Qin Zomi, it's the language provider and other agencies or the medical professional or whoever, the organization couldn't understand clearly because the name Zomi or Mizo is just like upside down, you know.
Yes.
Very similar.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
So I got a call quite a few times. I was told that, can you help us to interpret Zomi? But when I speak in Zomi, they are not. They are actually Mizo. So that's a very common mistake that we make in interpreting service. And also my background is Zomi and Chintarim. We are some people. Some client only want Chintarim. Chintarim is Zomi, the same, but from I don't know what Australia government recognize and NATI national accreditation and certification. How do they recognize the Zomi or Chintarim? Because that's exactly the same. Zomi and Chintarim is exactly the same, but Zo is slightly different, just slightly different. But the good thing is, if anyone requires Zo interpreter, just go straight ahead to Zomi. No mistake at all. Zomi and Zo, whoever speak Zo understand Zomi and
So,
Tedim.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
If anyone requires Zo, just go to Zomi. But if anyone requires Tedim Chin, just go to Zo, because all Zo people speak Tedim and Zomi. That's a good thing. Yeah, that's
Okay,
good.
look, well, you can see the difficulties that there is for NATI in trying to sort this out. Yes, it's really now. One thing I did want to ask is that are the Qin clients very good at actually saying my language is Zo or my language is Tedim? Are they good at saying that, or do they tend to just say Qin and then yeah?
It was in the past. Many Zomi people, many Tedim people, many Zo people just say, please give me Chin interpreter, or please give me Zomi interpreter. So, but now they understand, they just require Zo, Chin, Zomi, or Chin, Tedim, Chin, Zo, you know. So if they mention clearly, it's getting better now. Yeah, compared to in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Now, Ling, you speak a large number of varieties, including Hakka and Phalam and Burmese. Can you tell me about your own language background and your experiences in interpreting in those languages?
Sure. Yep. Thank you. Actually, I'm from Tanta Township. That is, it was in Hakka, but after 1974, Tanta is a new township. So I am from Tanta, and similar to Hakka. And I speak, yeah, my native language is Qin Hakka. And as I have mentioned already, there is many more small dialect spoken by their own, the ethnic, something like Zhou Pei, Lao Du. That's not mentioned in that previous you have shown, and
Yep.
Santang and Mi and Zhou Kwa and things like that. So a lot of different language, But the whole, the Hakka Township and Tanta Township speak Hakka Chin. And Phalam is, as I've mentioned already, Phalam's language is a little bit different, but we understand, it's understandable. And when I was in the university, my friends were, both of them are Phalam, and I was with them and I speak Phalam. So I know how to speak Phalam fluently. And since primary level school, we learn Burmese, and many children who goes to school understand Burmese more or less. And even after high school level, yeah, middle and high school level, every subject is learned by English except English. Sorry, learned by Burmese except English. So whoever go to school understand Burmese because of whoever go to school learn Burmese there. So most, I think most young Chin people may speak Burmese because of we go to school, we learn Burmese, and a lot of people speak Burmese. This way they understand. Young people, what I mean is, the young Chin can speak Burmese. A lot of, maybe 80% or 90%, can speak Burmese. And for me, I speak Burmese and Hakka Chin and Phalam Chin and Zhou Pei and Senteng and some sort of languages. And after arriving Malaysia, I was as interpreter for UNHCR for 5 years. And after that, when I came to Australia, I also continue interpreting for most of these Chin people and Burmese, and until today. Thank you.
Yeah. Now when you say all the younger people will understand Burmese and the ones who've been to school,
Yep.
does that also mean that of the older generation, you'll find far fewer who speak Burmese, and some of them may not have had an education, in fact?
Yeah. Because of those who ever go to school, they learn all subjects in Burmese. So I think the majority can speak Burmese anyway.
Yeah.
Can I add on to that? Just
please,
a little bit. Yeah, that's very important. Also, according to 2014 census in Myanmar, there's a linguistic survey. The 79.4% of Chin state population, they over the age of 15, all adults, they read and write Burmese, but it doesn't say speaking. Speaking is different. They can read and they can write. And only 20.5% of Chin State population do not read, do not write, and do not speak. So it seems like all adults many adults in Chin State and Burma, they can read and write Burmese. But the problem in Australia and other countries, the reason why we cannot speak and we do not understand Burmese is when we go to Malaysia or we go to India and we go to Thailand, we stay there for 10 years and 20 years. So we forgot all the Burmese. So it caused us, we lost all the Burmese. We cannot speak anymore. When we come to Australia, they forgot. So in Australia, don't expect many Chin people speak Burmese. They don't speak. Yeah.
Okay, so it's been a language attrition and a long time outside of Burma before getting to Australia. Yes, yeah. So all of those factors have come into it as well. Okay, now look, that's I think really critically important. Would there still be some degree of being able to read and read in Burmese? Would say if now the government was putting out information on say coronavirus, would that be read in Burmese by the Qin people or not really?
Not really.
Yeah. Okay.
Only educated people can read. Yeah. As I mentioned, everyone forgot already.
Things I'd like to move on a little bit. Look, I think that's very interesting about the different varieties. I think that's been a very clear explanation why, for example, Zomi is not the same as Mizo. It's a very different language. It's a very different variety, and that's very important. That Zomi and Tedim and Zo are mutually intelligible or virtually the same. Hakka and Falam Chin are also very intelligible to each other. So I think that is very good. It's some good news for the language service providers because I know how they scramble to find the right thing. And it's also very good to hear what you said, Zhang, that the Chin people actually now do identify their language quite well, and so they can ask specifically for their language, which I think is very important for language service providers. Yeah, I'm sorry, Florence, we lost you for a while there again with the technical problems, but I don't know if it's working again and we'll be able to hear you because we've been asking about the differences in the language and the degree of intelligibility and the degree to which people of those backgrounds also speak Burmese. And Zhang was making the point that the Burmese have very often lost, the Qin have very often lost their Burmese language because of the time away from Myanmar. So I don't know if you had anything to add there about your own experiences of interpreting
Yes.
in Mizo.
Yes. Mizo, like there are Mizo people in Myanmar and also in Mizoram, which is northeast part of India. So like during the country's war, like people from Myanmar fled to Mizoram and settled there and only come back when the war is over. So that's how like two people, like two different places. And in Mizoram, about 95% of current population is from diverse tribal origins and settled in the state, and mostly are from Southeast Asia. And the first people who migrate to Mizoram, they call Kuki, and later on Lushite. And so there, because Chin people, like they fled to the neighboring countries, which is Mizoram, India. So because India welcome refugee, and even there is a refugee camps. So you might, in Australia, you might come across people like who would say they came from India. So not from Myanmar, and mostly they will know a little bit of Mizo language, even though they are Hakka or Falam, they will know Mizo language and also a little bit of English and Hindi as well. And
okay, so it's quite a
yes.
complicated, linguistic landscape. Yes, yeah. Well, this,
And for Mizo, yes, sorry.
No, please go on. Yeah.
Yes, and also you can differentiate Mizo people just by looking at their name. At the end of the first name, you will see the letter I, which refers to female, and the letter A refers to male. That's how, like in Mizo, we differentiate male and female at the end of the first named. And also the degree of intelligibility between the different varieties. It's a bit hard to say a certain ethnic group is more intelligent than other groups, as we'll be generalizing it if we say that. So I don't know whether, like, the questions, because in this case we need to define intelligent, because is it asking about academic skills, social skills, or parenting skills? So there are many factors to consider, but ultimately I would say it would depend on how and where you are brought up, and would depend on the family's financial situation as well as individuals' capability. And the person of Chin speakers also speak Burmese. From my Mizo community, like I said, people from Myanmar, they would know Burmese, of course. They mostly Mizo people understand Burmese and can also speak Burmese well. And I came across many Chin people like Hakka, Falam, and I would say around 40%, because like I said, they live in Qin Hills and also poor conditioned, and most of them dropped out earlier or did not go to school. So, and also in Chin state, like different Chin dialects used in their respective territories, except in school. So basically only school is the only place where Chin people practically use Burmese language.
Yeah. No, thanks. That's been very good, and I think that gives us a very good roundup, and also more complexities. For example, that staying in India and so on, because of course the borders were just drawn arbitrarily, really, by the colonial powers, and so we have people all over the place, in India, in Bangladesh, and in Chin. And these languages are everywhere. The characteristics of the Chin population, and particularly the settlement issues which they're facing now, and from your experience of interpreting, what are the biggest issues that the Chin people now face in Australia? Ling, maybe I can start with you about the issues of settlement here and the difficulties that the Chin people face here.
Thinking about the settlement to Australia from Burma, Myanmar, as my experiences, there is still many people difficult to aware of this situation, because of majority those who come from Myanmar as refugees are not educated actually. Those who are the education background very low. Most of who come here as a refugee are education very low people, and even they don't know how to express about their their situation. And why do you come here, if we ask the question like that? So they don't know how to answer exactly. So it's very difficult for most of the people to express their own experiences. That's why settlement is as refugee, they are they have been facing many kinds of depression, and they're from military. They just fled and settled here. So majority are very difficult, to even, for example, when they are they are talking with the provider, whenever when they ask some question, they don't know how to respond and how to answer it.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. So
Mhm.
sometimes, as an interpreter, we just let them explain. We just let them know fast. The provider means that he wants you to to tell him something like so. After explaining them, they can understand. So thinking of their level, they are very low, and most of the majority people are still need a lot of experience and awareness here. Yeah.
And so things like employment and so on are difficult for the Qin people to find. Is that a big issue, and dependence upon
Also the
social security?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sang, have you got some more to say about the settlement problems that there are that you've noticed as an interpreter, and perhaps what makes interpreting difficult?
There's many difficulties, of course. In terms of settlement in new country is not easy. So when I work as a settlement caseworker in EMS Australia for a few years now, and I know that the language barrier is very difficult. Many people, especially all older elderly people, when they do not understand anything, they don't want to integrate, they don't want to collaborate with anyone, and for the young people also the same. For the young people, when they do not speak a good English, it's very difficult to find a job. They are qualified. We know that many people are qualified to do the certain things in Australia, like electrician, carpenter, many, even plumber and wiring, many people. But when the Austrian employer need only those who have local experience, and only those who speak better English, and those who have certain qualification or qualified to do the job. Paper qualification become very important. So our experience, overseas experience, become less experience. So that's the main issue. And also in settlement, housing issue is very important. We couldn't find accommodation, and we do not know how to report, how to write, what is it called? Any damages.
A tenancy lease, yeah.
They do not understand, and they just signed it, and what they know is just to sign. Austria, there's many things all the paperwork we need to sign. We do not really understand what they are. So yeah. And I got a call quite a few times to solve those problems as an interpreter, and many people say, "Oh, we do not know. We need to mow the lawn." Actually, the lease has all sort of agreement, all the responsibility for the tenant and the landlords, but we do not understand those stuff. That's the issue here.
And that's critical if there hasn't been proper sight translation done of the document, and people just go ahead and sign it and don't even know what's on it. Yes, yeah. Florence, have you had experiences like that? Sort of tell us about the issues you've found in settlement, and also as an interpreter.
Yes, it's quite the same as Zhang as well. It would be the language barrier would be the main issue, because from my interpreting experience as well, people like when they first arrived in Australia, and the case manager or worker, they will put in a find for them a house, a temporary housing. And like most family, they will want to live where the community is, and because of the language barrier, and also sometimes they just have to catch a local transportation as well, so they find it very hard. So they want to stay where the community people stay, and so that they can still enjoy association, and also they can practice what they used to do in Myanmar. So it's very similar, yeah.
So if we could have a look at some of the cultural aspects, children education, we've mentioned the low educational levels, but I'm interested in how their children are doing at school. I think service providers will be that. A little bit on religion, on gender issues, and on attitudes to authorities. If we could take those in turn, that would be good. Now, you mentioned the low educational levels. Ling, what about the generation of kids that are here? Are they keen to be in school? Are they responding to the Australian education system? What have you seen there?
Well, yeah. So far today, the children are quite okay with education, I think, because the most of our children from Qin people, Burmese people, they go to school and they can mix with their peers, and they talk English, and within a short period of time, something like 3, 4, 5 months, they speak English, and from then uh, they can they catch up with their lesson, and they become quite familiar with the situation. And I think from my point of view, children are quite okay with education, but those who are a little bit older, something like 14, 15 years, are a little bit difficult to learn English. For the young kids, it's easier, but that 14, 15, age 14, year 12, on year 10, 12, something like a little bit older children, a little bit difficult to learn English. But yeah, they take more time. They take more time to speak English. If they can speak English, if they understand English, it is easier to learn their lesson. So it's not a very big issue, I don't think. It's not a very big issue, I think. And one thing is that the context is quite different from here in Burma. As I'm a teacher, I know how to the way how we teach in Myanmar.
Yes.
It is teacher center in Myanmar, but here 2 ways of learning. Not only teachers, but here it's 2 ways. So a lot of children who are a little bit older are not accustomed with learning style here. So this is a little bit problem. But the young children is quite okay.
Florence or Zhang, have you got anything to add there on the education of the young children?
Yes, I just wanted to agree with that. Children here, they will not find it very hard adopting the new environment when migrating to Australia, and they will easily and quickly catch up the language from their schools, or like from friends. But however, the parents, because with very limited English, and when it's a problem and they cannot help completing their assignment, the children's assignment, so they will find it a bit hard. And also because in Myanmar, like parents are like older age, they were dropped out early schools, or it could be like not prioritizing education back then. But even in Australia, most of the parents or senior individuals, they could not finish their 3 hours entitlement English, because like language, it could be language barrier, or it could be the need to look for work to be able to support a family.
I wanted to go on to another aspect, which is religion. Now, we haven't mentioned religion so far, but I understand this is also a factor in the political situation. Maybe, Zhang, if you could tell us a little bit about Qin religion, that could be a useful thing to sort of know about. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the religion is very important. When, according to my experience, well, I found very good to have a religion. For the majority of Qin people are Christian background, and when they come to Australia, the first thing they do is they look for somewhere to go to church and to have a good friend. They trust those who go to church regularly, or they trust the community they are in. So when it comes to settlement issue, also the church has a great opportunity, a great responsibility to play in settlement rule. So I encourage all the organization or non-profit organization and any agency to have a good relationship with the church. Yeah, so because all the clients, many Qin people have their own belief. Yeah, it's very important. Religious is very important for Qin people. Yes.
And is that universal across the, or nearly universal across the Qin population, that they're Christians and actually have got a very close connection to the church?
Qin people, all of Qin people are Christian, but not all. Or other Karen people, Kachin, they are Buddhist and they are something else.
Yes.
I mean only Qin people. Yeah, not all Burmese. Burmese are Buddhist, but Qin people, most of Qin people are Christian. So.
Yeah. Well, that suggests a very important then link that service providers and so on need to make with religious bodies and so on. That's a basis of trust and of knowledge, which I think could be used very well. Yes. Look, that's a very interesting point about that. Ling or Florence, have you got anything further to add on the religious issue?
In terms of religion, as Zhang has already mentioned, it's quite important, and every Qin people are Christian, and they are, let me say, religious people anyway. That's why their children also are, the religious. But one thing here is quite a big problem we are facing now is that here is, freedom and, right. But in Myanmar, there is no freedom and no right apart from parents and the government. So parent can beat them, slap them if they are not the behavior good. Slapping them, scolding and everything. But here it's not allowed. So a lot of our Qin people, children, out of control. Let me say. So a lot of parents are quite disappointed to not able to control their children. So this is one thing. According to the Bible, children should be slapped or beat or something like that if necessary. But here you cannot do. So in from point of Bible view, it's very difficult situation now because there's a big freedom and right and everything. So that is one kind of issue we are facing.
Attitude towards authority, say to things like the police, or attitudes to social security, things like that. Has that? What are the sort of attitudes there? Because in many ways, I would think that the Qin, also being very religious people, tend to be very law-abiding and so on. But what are I know their experience of the police in Myanmar would not have always been friendly. What's the attitude towards authorities? Say towards authorities like police or social security systems, taxation office, things like that. Zhang, maybe you could comment a bit.
According to my experience, we are all well integrated to the authority because we are taught to follow and obey the law. Not many Burmese has broken the law in Australia yet, and it's very good to pay tax, and that's why the majority of Burmese people and Qin people work and they pay tax regularly. And until today, I haven't seen anyone has any problem with taxation of fees or the social security or anything. But one thing is when we were in Malaysia, because we were locked up in Malaysia for as a refugee for over, for my experience it was for over 4 years in Malaysia, and we need to bribe, we need to pay money to the police, we need to get very case $20, $50, 100 ringgit, we need to get very, otherwise you will arrested. And so those, when we come to Australia, we feel very safe. We know that the police doesn't take any bribe or any money, just comprehends and just apprehension and talk and just explain. If police ask to stop, and we stop. So I haven't seen many Burmese people have problem with police till today. Might be a few, might be very little, if so.
But that's a very positive move, actually, yes, because it's unfortunately it's not the same with every settlement group. But that is an interesting thing that you say there. Look, I wanted to just spend we've got a bit more time. I wanted to spend a bit more time on gender issues and the role of women in Burmese society. Florence, maybe you'd have some contribution there.
Culturally, both genders will have their respective roles in a family. For example, a father would be expected to support a family financially, and a mother will look after the children and also cook for the family. And children will split household chores and will help out their mother. And usually the families like live together, and until like children do not move out until they get married. They are married, and yes, and at least one child in the family would look after the parents in old age.
Okay, they're very traditional roles that you've outlined. Do you think some of that is starting to change or being affected by being in Australia, where perhaps those roles are no longer as clearly defined everywhere? Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah, since like the younger generation would say that started adopting here the Australian culture.
There is still really an adherence to those roles and that very helping attitude that the family has also towards the parents. I think you were saying that although roles are slowly changing, there is still a lot of support within the family for the family. That young people will still support their parents a great deal.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
I thought that was very interesting to hear those attitudes towards the police and the period they spent in Malaysia. They had to act in different ways towards the police. Look, I just want to put this up as one comment that I found. This is from Ethnomed, an organisation that deals with ethnicity and medicine, and this way of, I think we've already mentioned part of this before, how Qin people will not tend to spontaneously ask questions and tend to spontaneously give information and so on. That this injunction that service providers should provide direct questions always, rather than saying let me know if it hurts or get back to me if you need me or things like that. That there really needs to be a very upfront questioning and upfront making sure that their needs are satisfied. I was wondering what your response to that is. I think Ling, you already mentioned how people tend not to represent themselves very strongly and so on. Maybe you could speak a little bit more to that.
In terms of health interpreting, doctors and nurses are very aware of the situation of these Burmese people, I think, because the way they ask the patient situation is very understandable and very simple. It's very good, I think. But sometimes one thing is medical situation is a little bit, difficult because the terms and the name of medication, something like that. So when they ask them what medication are you using or something like that, they don't know how to tell the name of medication. That's all. But the way they ask, their question is very good and very acceptable and easy. So I think I don't see any problem with that medical health situation, health interpreting. The only thing is medication name. They don't know many times. They don't know. They have to show the letter and some sort of thing. Yeah, no big problem there.
Yeah. What's the level of awareness of their own bodies and their own body functions?
Body function quite also is not very big problem there, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult even for me, for interpreter, something like pancreas. In Qin, we don't have pancreas, so we need to explain what is.
Everyone has a pancreas.
Yeah, that's some sort of thing. Yeah,
yes.
We have to explain them.
Yes.
Pancreas should something like there and very close to that, and that is something like that. So this sort of thing is a little bit difficult for us to explain that.
Yeah. Is that your experience, Zhang? These issues, say in medicine, it can be in other issues as well, but in medical interpreting.
Yes, it's very important because when he just mentioned about pancreas, yeah. So the Burmese dictionary, most of the time when I interpret in Burmese or other Qin dialect, I use Qin. We haven't had a good medical dictionary yet, and we use Burmese. We use Burmese dictionary. So Burmese dictionary describe pancreas is different things. As we know in Australia, pancreas is the small, I don't know, the small thing in our stomach, yeah, but it says something else.
Yeah.
It says something else. So it's quite confused sometimes. So the most important for the medical setting and the medical professional to know is what medication they are using. They do not know the name of medication, so just let them know that please bring your medication, all your medication, and show us. Then that's the best way to know exactly what medication they are on.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Florence, I was showing that slide of the quotation from Ethnomed saying that Qin parents or Qin patients or Burmese patients generally never like to ask questions themselves, and there has to be direct questions being asked and so on. What have been your experiences in medical interpreting and any issues there?
Yes, from my experience in interpreting for Qin people, most like parents and older demographics, like they will just do what they are being asked, especially that if they've been asked by the authority, for example, governments, schools, banks, hospitals and stuff. In Myanmar, that's those places have a big influence in everyday in people life. They have power and big influence. So mostly like people will, especially lower social status and lower economic status and lower social people are expected to be submissive and not to complain anything about it. So basically, like they're not used to practicing their own rights. So for these, like most parents are, from my experience of interpreting, they will just do, for if I have to give an example, like for example, if an office worker did not explain the content of the certain documents properly and just ask them to sign it, they will just sign it without understanding what they are signing up for. And most are afraid to ask, why am I signing this, or like to speak up their own minds if they're as their rights allowed.
Yeah.
So I think this behavior is really can be exploited and easily be misled by a single text message, or it could be an email message sent by a scammers or individual corrupted. So I think in this case, people need to be taught their rights as well as to prevent themselves from the possible scammers. So, but they tend to oblige the government authority, and they will follow the rules and regulations set by the institutions and authorities.
I appreciate that you're some of the people who, in Melbourne at least, would be among the best qualified of the Qin interpreters. But of course, many Qin interpreters have had very little training. And I think just a few points that I'll make. I'm a person who trains interpreters and translators professionally. I've been at this for 30 years, and just a little of the things that I've sort of gathered, and please comment on this afterwards. I'll just run through a couple of points here, because I think people and service providers need tips for working with untrained interpreters. And what I always tell the service providers, of course, is to brief the interpreter to begin with, so that the interpreter knows what is going to go on. I think it's very important for the interpreter, particularly untrained interpreters, to really understand that they have to give everything. They have to give complete interpreting in both directions. Even if they think something's irrelevant or something's trivial, they still need to convey that. I think interpreters must ask for clarification. We've already heard that many patients or Qin clients might not ask for clarification or so on, for example, of documents, but of course the interpreter must always ask for clarification if things are not clear, because if you don't ask for clarification, you can only either omit or guess, and neither of those is ethical or good practice. I always tell service providers also that if the interpreter happens to have a side conversation with the non-English speaker, they also need to inform the English speaker about what's going on, so that everyone's on the same picture. And the last thing that I always use is the what's called the mirror technique. You ask the Qin speaker to repeat back, or sorry, to is misspelled, to repeat back through the interpreter any instructions or information you've given them, so that if you've told them about a particular thing they've got to do, whether it's in Social Security or in a hospital, you actually ask the Qin client to repeat back that information. So they're the sorts of things that I tend to stress in when I'm training service providers in interpreting. And maybe we can just spend the last few minutes talking about your experiences of interpreters and any other difficulties. You've already mentioned some issues, particularly about knowing Qin people knowing parts of their bodies and so on, or understanding what the documents are. But any last comments about your experiences as interpreters, and how you need to work together with the service providers to actually make sure that everyone understands what's going on in situations. Zhang, have you got some final words maybe on your interpreting and what you've seen in this area?
According to the NATI accreditation website, there's no ZOMI or Chintadim or ZO accredited, NATI accredited interpreter. You couldn't, because I don't know, maybe the examiner doesn't have enough resources, or I don't know. So most of those ZOMI, Chintadim, Chinzo, I might say they are not a very professional interpreter, because we have some people have qualification, some people, the majority of interpreter doesn't have qualification. They just work as business demand. So according to the demand, as the professional or the organization or any other agency, they need to let the interpreter know that what type of assignment, what type of interpretation do they need, and if legal interpretation, if it's a legal case or if it's a medical case, I strongly recommend to let them know that whether you are confident to do this or not, to ask them openly. If not, the medical and legal is very, I think that's the most dangerous for the interpreter and for the organization, for themselves.
Yeah, and that briefing is very important, and understanding, especially how good the interpreter might be in that situation. Yeah, that's very good. Ling, have you got thoughts on this, on the issues that the interpreters face, and particularly the untrained interpreters? Yeah.
Yep, of course. Anyway, the interpreter needs training, if possible, short training, or the updated training is very necessary, I think. Even though we have a lot of experience, let me say more than 15 years experience I have, but I'm not qualified actually. So every interpreter needs some sort of the up-to-date training, and I agree with you on that. Yeah, it needs. And the provider side, I would like to mention about the provider side. Sometimes, according to my experience, they don't understand how to contact with the client. Sometimes we need to introduce ourselves to the client. Hello, Mingalaba, something like that. How are you? I am your interpreter, something like that. So some providers do not wait that time, and they just off the line sometimes. So sometimes the provider side also, they need some sort of thing that to make ourselves to introduce to the client, and what is the reason, what is the reason you are contacting today, something like that. So some not many provider, some provider do not understand, I think.
Training is really so necessary in this area. We try and do things through our graduates also. We run a number of webinars, and we have started some training sessions, but of course we're just one provider, and it's a bigger issue. I know NATI is constantly trying to give more people at least recognition, if not accreditation, if not certification. So that's important to get more people onto the and doing some kind of training. And now even NATI, even for recognition, is demanding some training. Florence, we lost you for a minute there again. You were saying before I received my introduction to interpreter training, and then you fell off. So maybe if you can finish that sentence, that would be good.
The clients will say their things to me, and they say, "Oh, I just want you to know you don't need to interpret that," because at that time I did not know how to handle the situation, and I just quiet. So, but after getting training, and then I know what to say, and that I have to clearly, express my roles as an interpreter, that I have to translate accurately and everything what you said, something like that. So it is, for me, it is very helpful and very beneficial for me. So I really encourage like all interpreters like to get certified. But for some languages like Mizo language and Qin, not including Hakka, like Falam and stuff, they are still emerging language, so they might not have a test, but at least we can get a recognized practitioner for that. So I really encourage all interpreters, if possible, to get the training.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. Look, we've come to the end of the session. I'd like to thank you for working through some difficulties, including some technical difficulties. We have gremlins everywhere, and this is simply the situation that we're in now in coronavirus time, when everything has to be by electronic means, and we can't see each other face to face. So I'd like to thank all of you for participating in this. I've learned a great deal about the Qin. I do a lot of these sessions, and I really found this session very, very interesting. There were more things I didn't know about the Qin that I don't know about some other groups. So I've learned a lot, and I'd like to thank you for your considered contributions. And I think we've had some insights now which can be of a great help to service providers and to interpreters and translators. There's a recording made of this, and that will be used on occasions for service providers or for training. And I would like to thank your contribution.